Hi, my name is Cam Gott, and I'm an executive ADHD coach. Everyone has a basic desire to create positive change in their lives, to improve relationships, to find more fulfillment in life and in work. It's a basic human desire. ADHD can make this desire extremely challenging. So the premise of this positive change series is to synthesize my knowledge of coaching, ADHD, and leadership into about 10 fundamental principles. So consider this a 501 graduate level course or maybe a masterclass where I share information and proven models from 20 years of working with individuals with ADHD, those I call global creatives, and 15 years of training ADHD coaches. So global creatives are individuals I work with, I blog about. They're decision makers, they're influencers, business owners, and leaders. They have amazing ideas, but can struggle to get those ideas to market or to share with the rest of the world because of their ADHD. So the format of this is really to introduce a principle of the day, discuss the significance of the principle and how ADHD can impact here. Then we'll do a short teaching session where I leave you with a few exercises to practice. So take a moment, maybe stop or pause the video, grab a piece of paper, grab a notebook to capture some thoughts here. If you're looking for another resource, maybe not at a 501 level, but more maybe at a 301 level, I co-host the Translating ADHD podcast with fellow coach Shelley Collins. We've got 2 years of excellent content, all about work and being successful at work with ADHD. So let's go ahead and take a look at principle number one. Principle number one is your bandwidth is your number one resource for making better decisions. It seems like an obvious statement, right? Bandwidth is basically your cognitive capacity and executive control. Bandwidth is where we put our attention and then the effort that follows. Here's the thing, that humans are not great at protecting bandwidth. Our ability to hold attention is really at an all-time low. We live in an attention economy where so many different interests are vying for a chunk of our bandwidth. People with ADHD or global creatives are really vulnerable, particularly vulnerable to having their bandwidth siphoned off. So the first thing is just to sort of notice that bandwidth is something you have and it's your number one resource. Why is that so important? We are so wired for external stimuli. We're looking outward for resources, people, tools, strategies. How can I get better and be more efficient? And we don't realize that our attention system and our executive functioning system is our number one resource. Secondly, we don't necessarily take great care of that resource. So this is about, nourishing, recognizing what adds to bandwidth, what tends to deplete it. And so this week, it's really kind of just paying attention to that bandwidth and noticing what has your attention, what depletes your bandwidth, what pulls it off, what's distracting, what do you tend to avoid? To further explore the significance of bandwidth, here's a little teaching session. I want to show you a little model that I use. It's a modification of the Prochaska change model, right? I'm a change agent. I help people create positive change despite their ADHD. And so the Prochaska change model is a model that's been around a long, long time. And it just has these 5 different stages of moving from pre-contemplation into contemplation, determination, action, and maintenance. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So let's just start with contemplation. Is you're contemplating doing something, right? Before you realize that you want to go to the gym, you have to have the realization or the need, right? Gain 10 pounds with COVID. And so you contemplate that, right? The contemplation of seeing the need for something. Then determination is really fine-tuning and planning and preparing. This is where decision-making lies. This is where prioritization lies. And finally, we move into action and then into maintenance. The interesting thing about pre-contemplation is there's this period before you know you need something to change. And people with ADHD are famous for kind of being stuck in this place of pre-contemplation. I'm going to share my own interpretation of this model. So bring it in here. So you'll see that there's similar terms, but I've added ideation. So the idea here is we start in here and move around, right? With contemplation in the sense of contemplating what's your move? What do you want to do? We go from contemplation into ideation. This is brainstorming, right? It started thinking about, well, what can we do? I could go to the gym. I could buy a set of barbells and a rowing machine and put a gym in my house, right? Once we go from ideation, then we move into determination. This is, again, it's decision-making, it's prioritization. If ideation is where, you know, the tree is growing with all kinds of different branches coming off, determination is we bring out the pruners and kind of pruning back to decide what are we going to commit to. And so we commit and move into activation. I use activation because I see that it's more than just action. It is sharing thoughts. It's communicating with others. So under activation is discussions and production, moving thoughts out of your head and into something to a completion point. Once you do that, we come back around to naturally reflect on the experience and back to contemplation, reflecting on the back end. Okay, sounds pretty simple. With ADHD, here's the thing with ADHD is we can get hung up or kind of stuck. ADHD is often a transmission challenge, right? Car transmission, being able to shift gears. So this is about shifting gears from a reflective state or a contemplative state into ideation, into this determination and commitment, into activation. And that's one of the biggest challenges with ADHD is moving across from one state into another. So with ADHD, you can imagine it's almost like there's a bit of a brick wall in each of these, right? Separating these out. One place in particular is right here between determination and activation that's procrastination. That's when we're challenged to move into action. Furthermore, we can also get kind of hung up or get into circular thinking in any one of these. Circular thinking or circular doing, where we engage and it's not informed engagement. So it's a lot that I've shared, and you might want to listen to this again to kind of really take in these different terms. Right now, what I want you to do, my request, is for you to just notice, right? Bring curiosity to this cycle and notice how much bandwidth it takes to move from one stage to the next. As you move around, as you sort of move through decision-making process into action, what zaps your bandwidth, right? What is particularly hard? And don't judge yourself, because that's another place where we can get hung up is, regret or kind of negative thinking is a kind of a not so helpful way of contemplation. We get hung up in, I really blew that. Okay. So just notice your bandwidth this week, what adds to it, what pulls it away, and how your bandwidth, the level, how it goes up and down as you move through this cycle from contemplation to ideation, determination, and activation. All right, so that's principle number 1. And I'm Cam Gott. And we'll see you with principle number 2 pretty soon.